About a mile down the shoreline. There's a big cliff, and they call it Amateur Moin, which is the shooting up place. And in the fall, when the trappers go out, they'd stop by there when they were paddling, take an arrow and shoot it up that cliff. And if the arrow went up and stayed, it was good trapping. But if the arrow came back down, it was going to be poor trapping out here. Well, from talking to the elders and listening to them over the years, the Hudson Bay moved in before the church was built here. Okay, operated out in a little post out of here, and then other smaller trading posts further up where the people used to gather.
Mid-1840s, I guess it was, 100 and some odd people were baptized, Anglican, in this area. That was an incredible draw for the missionary society to establish here. And Reverend Hunt came here and established a mission.
According to Reverend Hunt's journal, he was looking for a few places to establish a mission. The Church Missionary Society instructed him he had to find some place on the Churchill River. So he eventually went to where Standey Mission is now, where the church is now.
I mean, one of the things that is key in the siting of a church is that you find a piece of rising ground, with the idea that the church with its tower and ideally with a spire is going to be seen for miles around. Standey Mission, it stands out brilliantly. So the siting is certainly very advantageous for the Anglican mark within the community.
And they started working on the church in 1850, and they completed it in 1856. Okay, but they took them a while because, like I say, the forest fire that burned up all the logs twice.
The people say that the men went down to get the material in the spring, that they came back late fall. It took them that long to bring them up the Churchill River. And they had to carry everything over the portage. The windows that came from England went capsized on the Montreal River coming down, so they had to reorder those.
We have here a Gothic building characterized by pointed arches, the use of stained glass that will flood coloured light into the interior. And this is an art form that is initiated in France in the 12th century. And so when we get to the 19th century, there is a revival of Gothic, not simply for the use of the style because it was aesthetically pleasing, but because it was equated with Christianity. It was a Christian style as opposed to classicism being pagan. And that is such an important background for any Anglican church anywhere in the world. And that is the background that we have here. Key thing, the use of the pointed arch, 99.9% of the time. That, as we see here, just look around and you see that the windows use pointed arches, the main arcade uses a pointed arch, doorways are pointed as well. We have the use of stained glass, very clearly seen in the major east window there, and we deal there, liturgically speaking, with the most important part of the building. That is the area immediately above the high altar. So in many ways, architecturally, we want to emphasize that. So we have the flood of light coming in there, but we see that it's got a tripartite division. Much larger window, it's letting in much more light. And if you look at the details on that, you'll see beautifully executed foliage patterns as well. The other absolutely key thing is the steep pitch of the roof with the truthful use of timber. One thing that's very important in Gothic Revival buildings is to represent material for what it is. So in other words, wood should appear as wood, stone as stone. There shouldn't be any one of the favourite words was sham, if it was plastered over and appeared like stone, but was sham, not truthful. That was absolutely frowned upon. And so as we look around here, we appreciate the simplicity, but we realise immediately that it is a wooden building. It is being truthful.
The window surrounds, which are crafted, they're hewn out of a larger piece of wood, and you can see the marks in the wood. And to me, that's what gives it, places it really in a kind of local context in relation to the First Nations community here.
They had to get logs coming down. They float them down the river, I think. And they had to square those logs with, I think it was with an axe. There was a frame with two uprights, big logs and a log across on both sides, and that's where they put the logs to whipsaw them.
Yes, the whole thing was done here. The flooring that you see on here are half timbers, half logs. On the other side, you still have the bark on it. When we did the renovation in 1982 and looked at the timbers, it was actually amazing how we did it by interlocking all the posts, the square timbers, and they built so that they gave a bit in the wind.
There were a number of unique things about the framing of the building that struck me. The most peculiar one was the use of curved timbers to make some of the arches around the windows. And these were timbers that were found in the walls of the building when the cladding was taken off to do the restoration work. So it made for quite a medieval-looking framing structure.
They were made here. All the ornamental work that you see, when talking to the elders, they said, no, the Reverend made them here. Turned them on his own. He was a woodworker. The pews were built here. Every piece of woodwork that you see was done here. According to history, Reverend Hunt had a great big iron bedstead, and that's what he turned into nails. The square nails that you see were made here from his own iron bedstead.
They have to build scaffolds as they build it up because it's quite high. So it is a very, very big task.
And one other element that I find particularly intriguing about this building is the proportion of it. I mean, it strikes me as incredibly monumental. It is taller and narrower. It is just this sort of proportion that one will find in exactly contemporary English churches. So the Reverend Hunt, we don't have an exact record of what he brought across in the way of plans or that sort of thing. We do have his diary in the National Archives.
We know as well that the design of the church was on Hunt's mind before he left England. It's recorded that he brought with him hinges, nails, latches, locks, stained glass window frames. So all those essentials are there for the building to go ahead. Back to the journal. April 10th, 1854, very important part here. Today I showed Fox and the Indians the plans and elevations I had just completed of the church. So it tells us very precisely that the Reverend Hunt is responsible for the design of the church.
I should just say a word or two about the arrangement of the division of the church here. The fact that up at the east end, immediately below the east window, we have the altar. Cross is placed on there. You will see that then we have the altar rails. And this is the key thing. That section is elevated above the next section of the sanctuary. Come along through there, and it's a step down again into the nave. So looking at it from the point of view of somebody in the congregation, it's one elevation into the sanctuary and another one up to the altar space. Then as we come into the nave, we have open seating, which we may take for granted now, but in fact this is quite revolutionary at the time. But from the social point of view, of course, it's very, very important that we have open seating. It's free for all. And that was an essential moral aspect that came with the Gothic revival. Then at the west end, the tower with belfry and spire. One other thing, I've just looked around here inside the tower. One thing that is quite remarkable, and I think it's fair to say cathedral-like again. I mean, I mentioned that earlier on about the building having these amazingly large monumental proportions, but the height of this window is absolutely incredible. Now, in that particular situation, we're dealing with a tall, narrow space, so it fits very, very happily. What is remarkable about Standey Mission is the scale of this building, which, relatively speaking, is absolutely huge. So it's very much a matter of building for the future. It's going to be a much larger community that was expected.
Standey Mission, the village of Standey Mission was unoccupied for most of the year. The Cree families would come back to it during the summertime. The daily life during the summertime was quite interesting. It began and ended with church. I think 7 o'clock in the morning everybody was up to go to church.
In the summertime, yes, the church was full. In the summertime, because the elders talk about, well, those acorns that you see up there, the church was so full that when they started singing at the top of their voices, those acorns up there would sway. Now they don't, because we hardly ever use the church. You can't tell whether they're rusted shut or there's just not enough service in the church that they don't sway anymore.
And then during the course of the day, it was just doing things to support yourself. They'd go fishing, they'd go visiting, they'd look after their gardens. And sometime in the evening, then there'd be evening prayers, and if there was some reason to celebrate, there'd be dances. And then in September, they'd stock up with their trapping supplies, and everybody would head back out to the trap lines for the winter.
People would bring in their furs to trade for the stuff that they needed. Flour, baking powder, sugar, the essentials that they needed. Firearms, bullets, traps.
When they would go out by canoes in the fall or come back in the spring, it could be anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks worth of traveling to get from Standey Mission to their trap line.
Actually, I had an uncle who worked with the church. But just before he died, he said, "I'm leaving you the church. It's in your hands. And that you look after it, take care of the burials and stuff of that nature." And it just, I mean, this was on his deathbed, and it just stuck. So I've been doing it now for the last 30 years, looking after it, maintaining it, making sure that when we have a death, that there's someplace to bury him. I go and ask the people, "Well, where do you want the grave dug?" "Well, I'd like to have it beside so and so." And I said, "Well, there's no room there. Can we move it over this way a bit?" So I have to try and be diplomatic. This is stuff that we have picked up whenever we dig a grave, because there used to be an old village site here where people used to live before they moved across to the other side. And we got an awl on an antler here that we picked up, stuff they used to use when they made their birch bark baskets or birch bark canoes. And we sort of come up with all sorts of things of that nature when we're digging a grave, because of the old village before they moved across to the other side. You used to have cabins, tents, teepees, that they lived on this side.
The village was the main location of occupation. There were 20 plus houses there about 1920. By the 1940s, more and more people started moving across to the south side of the river, because that was where the reserve was officially established, so the federal government started putting all of the services there.
It was more convenient for the people to be on that side, because the river here is particularly dangerous in the wintertime. It doesn't freeze over.
And by the 1970s, early 1970s, the old village was completely abandoned. As an archaeologist, we look at the physical remains that are left in the ground, but that doesn't mean that we ignore historical documents or things like the oral tradition of the people who lived in that area. All of that becomes incorporated into the whole study of a community like this, and try to recreate and bring back to life the history of this village that doesn't exist anymore, except in the ground and in written records and in people's memory.
From what I gather, pretty well all the early ministers learned Cree. And there was a layperson that was around to translate for them. But we have a copy of a Slavic Bible here, and we also have the big English translation that was donated by the Hudson Bay Company. Well, this is the Cree Slavic version. It's worn out quite a bit because it's well used. They used them every day. They took them to the trap line with them. They took them wherever they went. A lot of the history, local history, it's not written any place at all. So that you sit and listen to the old-timers talking about the hardships they had to go through to get to the community at Christmas time. So Christmas was a big celebration. They'd gather and have their square dances all night long, but come daylight, they go home, and then Sunday they were in the church having their services. After Christmas, they would hitch up their dogs and they were back out to the trap line. So for a week, 2 weeks, the community was roaring, and then we settled back down to a steady grind.
In 1945, then I was stationed at La Grange, but the outpost was Standey Mission. I went there once a month. I traveled by dog team in the wintertime and by canoe in the summer, until the CCF came into power, and then they had a sched plane for all those places up north. So I went by plane. I flew to Standey, stayed there 2 or 3 days, had weddings and wedding feasts and services, and then I would fly the next sched to Pelican Narrows. And so the Indians said as soon as they were baptized, they were not afraid of the bad spirit coming to destroy them. And so every child had to be baptized. And they also found that the church teaching was pretty well what they were elders, the medicine men were teaching. To love one another, to be good to the stranger that comes, and to feed them.
When the church first started getting established here, people getting baptized, and we had one old-timer that legend has it that he was happy with his 3 or 4 wives lived downriver. And then out of the blue, they say one day he showed up at the church and said, "I'm willing to give up my wives. Can you baptize me?"
Many aspects about the font. I mean, the shape, for a start, is octagonal. A shape that's associated, or a number 8 associated with death and baptism back to the earliest Christian times. The particular details of this are taken from late 12th, 13th century English models, where you have the bowl of the font supported on the 8 moulded shafts. And the placement is interesting as well, because again, the ecclesiologists recommended that it should be close to the entry point of the church, so close to a doorway, symbolic of entry, if you like, official entry into the church. You're baptized as a Christian.
The community of Standey Mission had maintained the building for many years, and because it was a wooden structure, even the best efforts at maintenance eventually lead to the need for replacement and rejuvenation of some of the building materials. And that's the point the building had reached in the 1980s.
There was a lot of bird damage done to the altar because the sparrows would come in through the openings. And
the building was dismantled, the siding was taken off, the foundation was rebuilt with stone, the heavy timbers were restored because of the water leakage had caused wood rot, as it does in historic buildings. And once the shell was reconstructed, at that point the building was ready for the stained glass work and then ultimately for the steeple to be added.
Yeah, to make a stained glass window itself, to replace one that's there, first I make a full-size drawing, which is usually done, but not necessarily, by taking a rubbing of the lid lines of the glass. Then those lines would be used to cut the various pieces of glass to the right size. Where there's a change of colour, we would use a different glass, a different colour glass. A number of them are repeating patterns. There are 2 main repeating patterns. One was just black lines, and the other one was black lines and yellow background. The black lines probably were painted freehand, but nowadays it doesn't make sense to paint those freehand. So my son actually made a silk screen, and we screened that window, which was then fired in a kiln. The installation was very straightforward. So we put up scaffolding, passed the finished window up, placed it into position and fixed it with stops. It's that simple.
they replaced the steeple to the original looks, the way it looked originally.
Over the years, the wood structure that was originally there with its Gothic arches and steep roof on the steeple deteriorated to the point that the steeple was actually lowered to eliminate the original fluted Gothic arches. The historic park staff, from heritage photographs of the period original to the building's early years, scaled the Gothic arches, scaled the original roof design, and together with their engineering consultant, they came up with as close an exact replica of the original as I think was possible. And they reconstructed it in aluminum this time so it would weather, particularly because it was so hard to maintain at the top of the tower. The actual replacement steeple was made in a fabricating shop in Regina, Saskatchewan, and transported by flatbed truck to Standey Mission. The way they arranged to get it across the river was by using a helicopter to airlift the steeple in a single piece off of the flatbed truck across the river and to position it on the tower of the church. The helicopter pilot was able to hold the steeple stationary while the crew managed to unfasten the tower and then safely secure it to the tower.
We had a couple of people up there that were guiding it, and finally, I think after about an hour, they were finally able to line it up and bolt it down. But it took them a while.
I'm working with the community at Standey Mission on a management plan for the church. The church is a provincial historic site, and we're working with the community to protect and enhance the church for everyone who comes here.
We meet once every month in the summertime to see what we can do, what needs to be done here. They've opened a lot of doors for us in the last couple of years, so that more and more people are starting to realize, well, there's something here that needs to be maintained. If we don't look after it, the elders start complaining about it. Well, how come, why is such and such not being done? So they want to make sure it's maintained. In fact, we have quite a few people that have left the community have requested to be brought back and buried here. So we do quite a bit of that. We have a lot of people, outside people coming in requesting to get married here. Well, I think the history has a lot to do with it, that they want to get married here, get buried here. And it's now the oldest wooden structure in Western Canada. So we do get a lot of visitors that stop in canoes, other people that come in just to look see the church. And there'll be people around. Especially in the summertime, if they want to come up, there's always somebody on this side or on the other side that'll ferry them across to have a look at it. People can walk in anytime they want. The door is never locked.